The human came to the alien world with quiet steps. His name was Daniel, a soldier. But today he was not here for war. He was part of a peace mission between humans and the alien race called the Zorath. The Zorath were strong, tall, with skin, like stone and eyes that glowed faintly. They lived by rules that were hard and unforgiving. To break a law was to face punishment in public without mercy. Daniel walked into the main square of the alien city. The air was heavy, filled with strange smells of burning oils and bitter herbs. Around him, the crowd of aliens gathered, their voices low, their eyes sharp. They did not like humans much, not yet. Some thought humans were weak. Others thought they were dangerous. Daniel felt their stares but kept his head high. He was here to learn, to show that humans could live in peace with them. But peace was fragile like glass. One wrong moment could break it, and that wrong moment came faster than anyone expected. At the center of the square stood an alien girl. She was young, maybe 16, with pale blue skin and dark eyes wide with fear. Her hands were bound by iron cuffs. 2 guards held her tightly as the crowd murmured. Daniel could hear the whispers. She broke the law, they said. She must pay. The elder of the Zorath raised his staff and spoke with a voice like thunder. This girl has broken the sacred rule, he declared. She has stolen from the temple. The crowd gasped. Their voices rose like a wave. Stealing from the temple was one of the greatest crimes, and the punishment was cruel. 10 lashes. With the burning whip, Daniel's heart sank. He looked at the girl, trembling, shaking her head. I did not, she whispered, her voice breaking. But no one listened. The guards dragged her to the center, where a tall wooden post stood. Beside it, a weapon of terror waited. The burning whip. It glowed faintly with heat, its tips sharp like blades. The alien executioner lifted it slowly. The crowd grew silent, waiting for the punishment to begin. Daniel clenched his fists. He had seen whips before, but this was different. It was made to tear skin, to leave scars forever. The girl's face was pale with fear. She was too young, too small. Daniel's heart raced. He knew what would happen if the lashes struck her. She might not survive. The elder gave the signal. The first lash was about to fall. The executioner raised the whip. The crowd held its breath, and in that moment Daniel stepped forward. Stop! His voice rang out sharp and strong. The crowd turned, surprised. A human had spoken. Daniel walked into the circle, his boots hitting the stone floor with a steady beat. The guards froze. The girl looked up in shock. Even the elder narrowed his eyes. What is this? The elder asked, his voice cold. Daniel's heart pounded, but he did not stop. He looked at the elder, then at the executioner, and finally at the girl. I will take her punishment, he said. A silence fell like a heavy blanket. The aliens stared, their glowing eyes wide. They did not understand. Why would a human take pain for an alien? The girl gasped, her lips trembling. No, she whispered. You cannot. But Daniel only stood taller. I will, he said again, his voice steady. She does not deserve this. The elder's staff shook as he pointed at Daniel. You are a fool, human, he growled. This punishment is death for one like you. Daniel did not move. I accept it, he said, his eyes locked on the elder. The crowd erupted into whispers. Some laughed, calling him weak. Others frowned, uncertain. The alien guards looked at each other, unsure what to do. The executioner tilted his head, confused but ready. Finally, the elder raised his staff once more. So be it, he declared. The human will take the lashes in her place. The crowd roared in shock. Daniel felt his chest tighten, but he stood firm. The guards released the girl and grabbed him instead. They tore his shirt from his back, exposing his skin. The air was cold, and he shivered. The girl tried to protest, but her voice was lost in the noise of the crowd. The whipmaster stepped forward, lifting the burning whip. Its glow lit the human's bare back. The crowd grew silent again, waiting for the strike. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. He thought of home, of the blue skies of Earth, Then he opened them and stood tall. He would not show fear. Not now, not in front of them. And as the whip was raised high, the aliens leaned forward, wondering how long this human could endure, and why he would suffer for someone not of his own kind. The Abba square was silent. Every alien eye watched the human now tied to the post. His shirt lay in the dirt, torn away by the guards. His skin, pale and scarred from old battles, was bare before them. The burning whip glowed faintly in the alien executioner's hand. Its ends hissed like snakes hungry for blood. The young alien girl stood on the edge of the circle. Her heart raced with fear and guilt. She had done nothing wrong, yet this human had taken her place. Her brothers were not there. They were far away on patrol. And now this stranger, this human, would bleed for her. Daniel's arms were bound to the post, the iron cuffs dug into his wrists, but he did not bow his head. He stood tall, his eyes fixed on the crowd. The alien elder raised his staff. "Begin," he said, his voice cold and final. The first lash struck. A crack of fire and steel across human flesh. Daniel's body jolted, his teeth clenched. A red line opened on his back, blood rising fast. The crowd gasped. Some laughed cruelly. Others stared in silence, unable to look away. The second lash came, harder, sharper. Daniel grunted but did not scream. The sound of the whip echoed off the stone walls of the city. The girl's eyes filled with tears. Her hands trembled as she whispered, "Stop, please, stop." But no, one listened. The third lash tore deeper. Daniel's breath grew heavier. His knees wavered, but he forced himself to stand straight. He would not fall, not while the aliens were watching, not while the girl looked at him with those wide, terrified eyes. The executioner frowned. Humans were not supposed to last this long. The whip was made for Zorath flesh, harder than human skin. A single strike should have broken him, yet this man still stood, still silent, still strong. The fourth lash landed. Blood sprayed across the stones. Daniel bit his lip, the copper taste filling his mouth. The crowd murmured louder now. Some of the aliens shifted uneasily. They had expected screams, begging, weakness, but instead they saw fire in the human's eyes, a fire that refused to die. The girl's knees gave way as she fell to the ground. She could not watch, but each sound of the whip forced her eyes open again. She hated herself for being the reason. She wished it was her, not him. Yet the human had chosen this, and he bore the pain without complaint. The fifth lash struck. Daniel's body shook. For a moment it seemed he would fall, but he pushed against the ropes, forcing himself upright. Again, the executioner's jaw tightened. Anger flashed in his alien eyes. This was supposed to break the human. Instead, it was breaking the silence of the crowd, changing their thoughts in ways none of them expected. By the sixth lash, Daniel's back was a map of blood and scars. Each line burned, each cut screamed, with pain. But still he endured. His breath came ragged, yet in his eyes there was defiance. The kind of defiance that even the Zorath respected. The elder leaned forward on his staff. Confused, unsettled. This was no ordinary human. This was something else. And the people began to whisper. "He is not weak," one said. "He is not afraid," said another. The seventh lash ripped across his flesh. Daniel groaned, his vision blurring. But the sound was not defeat. It was rage. He forced his head up, staring at the elder. His eyes burned with a fire that no whip could put out. The executioner grew restless. Sweat glistened on his stone-gray skin. He wanted the human to cry, to beg. But the human gave him nothing, only silence and steel. The eighth lash struck. Daniel's knees bent. His body leaned forward, almost falling. But he pushed himself back again. Blood dripped down his sides. The dirt beneath him grew dark with it. The crowd could smell the iron in the air. It mixed with the burning scent of the whip. The girl pressed her hands to her mouth. Her tears streamed silently. The ninth lash fell. The crack echoed like thunder. Daniel's body jerked violently. He gasped for air. For a heartbeat, he almost collapsed. But then, with pure will, He forced himself upright again. The crowd erupted in shocked cries. No one had ever seen such defiance. A human, weaker in flesh, had stood through 9 lashes of the burning whip. Something even strong Zorath warriors struggled to endure. The executioner snarled. "This is the last," he said. He raised the whip higher than before. The air grew still, every alien eye fixed on the human. Would he finally fall? Would he finally break? Daniel lifted his head. Blood poured from his wounds, his body trembled with exhaustion, but his eyes remained sharp. He whispered under his breath, "For her, for peace." And then the whip came down. The whip rose high into the air. The crowd held its breath. 9 lashes had already torn the human's back into strips of red pain. His body swayed, weak and trembling, yet his spirit still stood unbroken. The executioner's hand tightened on the burning whip. Anger burned in his eyes. This was supposed to be quick. 1 lash, 2 at most, and the human should have fallen. But now the crowd murmured in awe. Some whispered, "He is still standing." Others muttered, "No Zorath could endure such pain without crying out." The young alien girl pressed her hands to her mouth. Her heart thundered in her chest. Each strike felt like it landed on her instead. She wanted to scream, to run forward and shield him, but her legs would not move. She felt powerless and guilty. This man was suffering for her, a stranger. Why? Why would he do this? The elder raised his staff. His eyes narrowed with curiosity. He had seen many punishments, but none like this. The human was rewriting the meaning of endurance before their eyes. The whipmaster roared and swung the whip down with all his strength. The 10th lash cracked through the air like lightning. It struck Daniel's back with savage force. The sound was like flesh tearing apart. Blood splattered across the stones. The human's body jerked violently. He stumbled forward. The ropes dug deeper into his wrists as he sagged against the post. The crowd gasped. At last, the human would fall. But then, he did not. Slowly, painfully, he lifted his head, his breathing ragged, his vision blurred, yet his knees straightened. Step by step, he forced his broken body upright again. His bloodied back leaned against the post. But he was standing. The human was still standing. The crowd erupted in shocked cries. Some roared in disbelief. Others shouted with fury. How could a fragile human endure what even alien warriors feared? The executioner staggered back, his face twisted with shame. He had given everything, yet he had failed to break this human. Daniel's lips trembled as he tried. To speak, his voice was rough, low, broken, but still strong enough to carry in the silence. "Is that all?" he said. The crowd froze. The elder's eyes widened. The alien girl's tears fell harder. Her heart twisted with something she had never felt before. Respect, gratitude, and awe. The executioner snarled and stepped forward again. "I can give him more," he shouted. The elder slammed his staff down. "Enough!" he thundered. The sound echoed through the square. The whipmaster froze. The elder's glowing eyes locked on the human. "This man is not broken," the elder said slowly. "This man has shown strength." The guards moved forward to untie him. Daniel's body nearly collapsed the moment the ropes were cut. His legs trembled. His shoulders sagged. Blood streamed down his back like rivers. But even as he fell to his knees, he caught himself. He would not bow. He forced his head, up, eyes burning with the same fire. He knelt, but not in defeat. He knelt in defiance. The girl rushed forward. She caught his shoulders, her small hands trembling. "You should not have done this," she whispered. "You will die because of me." Daniel gave a faint smile, blood staining his lips. "No one should suffer for what they did not do," he murmured. His words struck her heart like a blade of light. She could not answer. Her tears fell on his broken skin as she tried to hold him up. The elder watched in silence. His staff lowered. The crowd grew restless. Some aliens bowed their heads in quiet respect. Others turned away, ashamed of their laughter earlier. A new thought spread among them. Perhaps humans were not weak. Perhaps they were something else. Something more. The girl cried out to her people, "Do you not see? He is not one of us, yet he suffers for us." Her voice cracked, but it carried far. "He is braver than any warrior here." The elder turned his eyes to her, then to Daniel, barely conscious yet still unbroken. His voice was low, almost uncertain. "Perhaps the human is worth more than we believed." The executioner threw the whip aside. He could not meet the eyes of the crowd. He felt defeated, not the human. The people whispered louder now, respect growing like fire in dry grass. Daniel's head drooped, his body trembling. Darkness swam at the edges of his vision, but before he lost consciousness, he saw the alien girl's face, her tears, her determination, and he whispered one last time, "Live, be free." His body collapsed against her arms. The crowd gasped, but the girl did not let him fall. She held him, weak as she was, her voice breaking as she cried out, "He will not die. I will not let him die." The square was no longer silent. The punishment was over, but the echoes of it would remain forever in their hearts, in their eyes. They had witnessed something they could not explain. A human, broken in body but unbroken in spirit, and that spirit had shaken their world. The sun fell behind the jagged mountains. The alien city grew quiet. Shadows stretched long across the stone streets. But in the small hut on the edge of the square, pain filled the air. Daniel lay on a rough bed of woven reeds, his body broken, his skin torn open from the lashes. Each breath was heavy, each movement sent fire through his veins. Blood had dried across his back in thick lines. Fresh. Wounds still oozed slowly, the smell of iron mixed with smoke and dust. The alien healers had refused to touch him. "He is only a human," they said. "Let him die." Their voices were cold, their eyes uncaring. To them, his act was madness. But to one girl, it was not. The young alien girl slipped quietly into the hut. She carried a bowl of water and strips of cloth. Her hands shook, but her face was set with determination. She knelt beside him. Her heart ached when she saw his wounds up close. His back was no longer skin. It was fire, blood, and broken flesh. Yet even in this state, he breathed steadily. He was alive. She dipped the cloth into the water and pressed it gently to his back. Daniel groaned, his eyes half opening. He saw her face in the dim light of the small fire, her dark eyes wet with tears. "Why?" she whispered, her voice cracked. "Why would you take my punishment?" Daniel's lips were dry, his voice faint, but his words carried weight. "Because you did not deserve it." She shook her head, pressing the cloth harder. "You nearly died," she said. Her tears fell on his skin, mixing with the blood. "You are a stranger. Why would you care?" Daniel's gaze held hers, his breath uneven but steady. No one should suffer for a crime they did not commit. He paused, gathering strength. And peace is not built by watching others fall. It is built by standing for them. The girl froze. Her heart felt heavy. In her people's world, strength was measured by blood, by the whip, by the blade. But this human had shown another kind of strength, a strength she had never seen before. She pressed fresh cloth to his wounds. The water quickly turned red. Her hands trembled, but she did not stop. Every hiss of pain from him felt like a knife in her chest. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "You should hate us, yet you protect us." Daniel closed his eyes, his voice fading. Hate brings nothing, only more pain. His head tilted to the side as sleep dragged him down. The girl covered him with a rough blanket, her eyes fierce despite her tears. "I will not let you die," she said. Her voice shook but carried fire. Outside, the night deepened. Alien torches burned along the walls, and in the darkness, two tall figures stood watching. The girl's brothers had returned from patrol. They had seen everything in the square. They had seen the lashes. They had seen the human stand, and now they watched their sister kneel beside him. Her hands stained with his blood, the older brother clenched his fists. "This is weakness," he muttered. Our sister should not care for a human. But the younger shook his head. Did you not see? He endured 10 lashes. Not even our warriors could do that. The older brother growled. He is still only human, fragile, soft, breakable. The younger's eyes narrowed. Then why did he not break? The hut's firelight flickered across Daniel's wounded body. The girl wiped his brow, whispering words of comfort. The brothers stood in silence for a long moment, their hearts torn between pride, anger, and confusion. For the first time, they did not know if the human was a fool or something greater. Inside, the girl finished cleaning his wounds. Her arms ached, her eyes burned with exhaustion, but she did not leave him. She sat beside him all night, listening to his broken breathing. Every rise and fall of his chest gave her hope. She whispered stories of her childhood, hoping her voice would keep him tethered to life. Daniel stirred once, his voice barely a breath. You should rest, he murmured. The girl shook her head quickly. No, if I sleep, you may not wake again. Her voice cracked. I will watch. I will not leave you. Daniel's lips curved into the faintest smile before he fell back into sleep. The night dragged on, heavy and slow. The brothers remained outside, silent guardians, though they did not admit it. The older brother's eyes narrowed. If he dies, our sister will break. The younger answered quietly. And if he lives, our people will change. The hut was filled with the sound of fire crackling and shallow breathing. The girl's head drooped with exhaustion, but she fought to stay awake, her hand still holding the humans, her heart still beating with fear and hope. Outside, the stars shone bright over the alien city. The wind carried whispers through the streets, and somewhere deep in the silence, the beginning of something new was taking shape. Not just for the human, not just for the girl, but for all their people. The night was long. The human slept in the small hut, his body weak, his breath shallow. The alien girl sat beside him, fighting sleep, her hands still stained with his blood. But outside the hut, 2 figures stood in silence. Her brothers. They were warriors of the Zorath, tall, broad, with scars across their stone-like skin. Their names were Kale, the eldest, and Rin, the younger. Both had fought in battles. Both had seen men die. But never had they seen what the human had done. That day, Kale's arms were crossed, his jaw hard. He spoke first, his voice like gravel. This is foolishness, he muttered. Our sister wastes her time on a weak creature. Rin did not answer right away. His eyes were fixed on the hut, on the dim firelight flickering through the cracks. He could still see the image of the human standing under the whip, broken, bleeding, but unbowed. Finally, he said, his voice quiet. Was it weakness, Kale? Did you see weakness in him? Kale turned sharply, his eyes glowing faint in the dark. He is flesh and blood, softer than us. 10 lashes should have killed him. His fists tightened. He should have fallen after the first, yet he did not. Because he is too stubborn to know when to quit. Rin shook his head. No, brother, you are wrong. What I saw was not stubbornness. What I saw was strength. Not of body, but of spirit. Kale's teeth clenched. Our people do not measure spirit. We measure power. The whip was made to break warriors. Even some of our kind have fallen after fewer strikes. He leaned closer, his voice low with anger. And yet you admire him? A human? Rin's gaze was steady. Yes, he said simply. I admire him, because when others would beg for mercy, he stood silent. When pain should have crushed him, he rose. He took punishment meant for our sister. Would you have done the same for a stranger, Kale? Kale's jaw tightened, but he did not answer. The question cut deep. He would have fought for his sister, yes, but for someone not of his blood, not of his people. He was not sure. Rin's voice grew stronger. You call him weak, yet even the Zhao elder was forced to admit his strength. Do you not see how the people whispered? They looked at him with respect. Some even lowered their heads. Kale turned away, staring at the stars. I saw it, he admitted, his tone sharp. And that is what troubles me. If the people begin to look at him as more than human, what will that mean for us? For our honor? Rin's fists clenched. Honor is not lost when another earns it. Honor grows when we respect true courage. Cale glared at his younger brother. You speak as if you wish to kneel before him yourself. Rin's eyes did not waver. If the time comes, perhaps I will. The word struck like a blade. Cale's chest burned with pride and anger. To kneel before a human? Impossible, unthinkable. And yet, the image of Daniel standing under the whip would not leave his mind. Every lash that struck had shaken Cale as well. Deep inside, he knew Rin was not wrong. Silence fell between them for a long moment. Only the sound of the wind moved through the alien streets. Inside the hut, their sister whispered softly to the human. Cale's gaze softened slightly. She believes in him now, he said. More than she ever believed in us. Rin's voice was calm but firm. She does not believe in him because he is human. She believes because he did what no one else dared, not even us. Kyle's hands shook, his pride fighting against truth. He wanted to deny it. He wanted to call the human foolish, reckless, weak. But the memory of the 10th lash haunted him. The moment Daniel lifted his head, bloodied but unbroken, the moment he whispered, "Is that all?" Cale closed his eyes. That was not the voice of a weak man, he admitted at last. Rin nodded slowly. It was the voice of a warrior. The word hung in the air between them. A human. A warrior. The thought was dangerous, yet powerful. From the shadows, a few other Zorath warriors watched as well. They had come quietly, drawn by curiosity. They had seen the same thing, and whispers had already begun to spread. The story of the human who endured 10 lashes. The story of the human who stood for an alien girl. Kyle looked at the hut one more time. He saw his sister bending over Daniel, her hands gentle, her eyes fierce. He let out a long breath. I will not bow to him, he said, his tone hard. But I will not call him weak again. Rin's lips curved into a faint smile. That is the first step, brother. Cale growled softly, but said nothing more. The firelight from the hut flickered against the dark sky. Inside, Daniel stirred in his sleep, his body broken, but his spirit still burning. Outside, 2 brothers stood divided, one torn by pride, the other moved by respect. And both knew that the human's act had changed more than just their sister. It had planted doubt. It had planted respect. It had planted the beginning of something their people could not yet name. The night finally gave way. A pale red glow touched the horizon. The alien city stirred awake. Shadows stretched across the stone streets as fires burned low. But one, hut on the edge of the square, did not sleep. Inside, Daniel moved slowly, every breath burned like fire. His back screamed with pain. The girl had worked through the night, cleaning and binding his wounds. Her hands were tired, her eyes heavy. But she refused to leave him. When the first light entered the hut, Daniel opened his eyes. His body was weak, but his spirit pressed him to rise. He gritted his teeth and forced himself up on one elbow. The girl rushed forward. No, you cannot move yet, she whispered. You will tear the wounds open again. Daniel gave a faint smile. They must see me, he said, his voice hoarse. If I hide, the lashes will mean nothing. The girl shook her head. They already saw your strength, she said. They whispered about you all night. But Daniel only shook his head slowly. Strength is not in whispers. Strength is in standing, and I will stand. With great effort, he swung his legs over the edge of the bed. His hands pressed to the wall as he pulled himself up. His body shook, his back burned with agony, but inch by inch he stood. The girl gasped, ready to catch him, but he steadied himself, his eyes sharp despite the pain. He would not crawl. He would not bow. Outside, the city gathered again. Word had spread through the night. The human lives, they whispered. The human still breathes. By dawn, the square was full once more. Zorath warriors, elders, children, all came to see. Some came expecting to see him dead. Others came to see if the impossible was true. The hut door creaked open, and silence fell. Daniel stepped out, his back wrapped in rough bandages, his shirt torn. His steps were slow, heavy, but his head was high. His eyes locked on the crowd, and though his body trembled, he walked into the square. Gasps rose. Even the elder leaned forward on his staff. The executioner frowned, his pride shaken once more. The alien girl followed close behind, her hand hovering near him in case he fell. But he did not. Step by step, he crossed the square. Blood stained his bandages, sweat dripped from his brow. Yet he stood before them all. Whispers grew louder. He should not be alive. He should not be walking. Is this truly a human? Daniel's voice was rough but steady. You struck me 10 times, he said, and still I stand. The crowd shivered at his words, not from fear but from something stronger. Respect. From the edge of the square, 2 figures pushed through. Cale and Rin, the girl's brothers. The crowd parted as they walked forward, their heavy steps echoed on the stone. They stopped only a few feet from Daniel. The air grew thick with tension. Everyone waited. Would the warriors strike him down? Would they test him themselves? Daniel's eyes met theirs. He did not look away, even broken, he faced them like an equal. Cale's gaze was sharp, full of pride and anger. Rin's was steady, thoughtful, burning with something new. For a long moment, none spoke. Only the sound of the wind filled the silence. The girl stepped forward quickly. Brothers, she said, her voice pleading, do not harm him. He saved me. Cale's eyes flicked to her, then back to the human, his jaw clenched, his fists tight. The crowd leaned closer, every heart beat fast with suspense. Cale finally stepped forward. The crowd tensed. The girl gasped. Daniel did not move. If this was the end, he would face it standing. Cale stopped just before him. The tall warrior looked down at the wounded human, his face unreadable. Then slowly, he reached for the weapon at his belt. Gasps spread through the crowd. The girl cried out, "No!" Rin's hand shot out, gripping Cale's arm. "Wait," he said firmly. The elder raised his staff. The people held their breath. Would the warriors cut him down, or something else? Cale's hand tightened on the weapon, but he did not draw it. Instead, he stared hard at Daniel, his voice low, filled with conflict. "You should be dead," he growled. "No human should have endured." Daniel's voice was weak but calm. "Yet I did," he said simply. The silence that followed was heavy. The girl clutched her hands together, praying. The crowd waited for the warrior's choice. Kyle's chest rose and fell. His pride battled against the truth he could not deny. He had called the human weak, fragile, breakable. But here the man stood, alive, unbroken. And Cale's heart trembled with respect he did not want to feel. Rin's voice cut through the silence. "Brother," he said. His eyes locked on Daniel. "This man is no ordinary human. He has earned something from us." Kyle glared at his younger brother. The crowd held its breath. The moment stretched long. The human stood tall, waiting. The girl's eyes filled with tears, and the warrior's decision hung in the air like a blade. The square was silent. Daniel stood in the middle, his body shaking, his back torn and bleeding beneath rough bandages, yet his head was high, his eyes steady. Before him, Cale and Rin, the alien girl's brothers, stood like statues. The people waited, holding their breath. Cale's hand still hovered near the weapon at his belt. The crowd believed he might strike the human down, but Daniel did not flinch. Even broken, even half dead, he faced the warrior as an equal. The girl stepped forward quickly, her voice trembling. "Brother, please, he saved me." Her eyes were wet with tears. "He suffered for me when no one else would." Rin's gaze softened as he looked at her, then at Daniel, who swayed on his feet but refused to fall. "This man has earned more than death," Rin said firmly. "He has earned our respect." Cale's jaw tightened. His pride screamed inside him. He wanted to call the human weak. He wanted to dismiss him as a fool. But the memory of 10 lashes, the memory of Daniel lifting his head and whispering, "Is that all?" burned in his mind. It would not leave him. The elder stepped forward, his staff striking the stone. The sound echoed through the square. "Speak your judgment, warriors," he commanded. "Will this human be cast aside or honored?" Kyle's chest rose and fell heavily. His glowing eyes scanned the crowd. Every face was turned toward him, waiting, some hostile, some awed. His sister's gaze begged him, Rin's eyes challenged him, and Daniel simply stood, silent, unbowed. Finally, Kale moved slowly. He stepped closer to the human. The crowd tensed. The girl gasped. Rin held his breath. Kyle stopped before Daniel, towering above him. For a long moment he only stared. Then, he dropped to one knee. Gasps tore through the crowd. The sound spread like thunder. The mighty warrior Kale, kneeling before a human. It was unthinkable, it was impossible, and yet it was real. Daniel blinked, his body weak, his vision hazy, but he saw it clearly. Kale's head bowed before him. The warrior's deep voice carried through the silence. "You are no longer just a human," he said slowly. "You are my brother." The girl covered her mouth, tears spilling. Rin stepped forward without hesitation. He too fell to his knee beside Kale, his eyes burned with pride. "And mine," Rin said, his voice steady. "You stood when no one else could. From this day you are of our blood." The crowd erupted. Some shouted in shock, others bowed their heads. A wave of respect spread through the people. The story of the human who endured the whip would become legend. But more than that, it was happening now. They were witnessing a new bond. The elder's staff struck the ground again. His voice thundered over the noise. "Then let it be known, this human, Daniel of Earth, is no longer outsider. He is Zorath brother. He is warrior." Daniel swayed, his knees buckling. The girl rushed to catch him, but Kale and Rin rose quickly, each taking one of his arms. They lifted him up, not as prisoner, not as victim, but as kin. The human stood between them, barely able to walk, but he was not alone. The brothers held him strong. The crowd parted as they carried him toward the center. Some bowed their heads, others touched their fists to their chests in respect, a gesture once reserved only for their greatest champions. The girl walked beside them, her face proud. For the first time, her people looked at her not with pity, but with honor, because the man who had saved her now stood as her brother's equal. As they reached the elder's platform, Daniel forced his legs to steady. He would not be carried like a broken man. With a deep breath, he pulled free and stood on his own. Blood stained his bandages, his body trembled. But he stood. The crowd fell silent once more. Daniel raised his head. His voice was low but carried across the square. "I did not suffer for glory," he said. "I did not endure for honor. I endured because no innocent should bleed for another's crime. If peace is to exist between us, let it begin here, with me, with you, with blood shared not in war, but in sacrifice." The people listened. Many lowered their heads, some with shame, some with newfound respect. The elder bowed slightly, a gesture so rare it shocked even his own people. "Your words are true," he said, "and we will remember them." The girl's brothers stepped behind Daniel. They placed their hands on his shoulders, their voices strong. "We kneel no longer to the whip, we kneel to courage." The crowd roared, not in anger, but in agreement. The human had come as outsider. He had stood as prisoner, but he left the square as something greater. Brother, warrior, legend. That night, fires burned across the city. Songs were whispered, stories told. The story of the man who bled for an alien girl. The man who made proud warriors kneel. The man who turned pain into honor. And as the stars shone above the alien world, Daniel lay in the hut again, his body weak, but his heart strong. He had come as one human, but now he carried the respect of an entire people. The first step of peace had been written, not with words, but with blood and courage.